Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt drained after spending time with certain people, as if something essential was taken from you? This is no accident. Some relationships slowly empty your soul while filling you with doubt. I have spent my life studying the hidden patterns of the human mind and have found that the people around us shape our reality more than we realize. The ancient Greek philosophers knew something important. They understood that we become like those we spend time with. This truth remains with us today. We must choose our companions wisely, for they become the invisible architects of our fate. In my years working as a psychiatrist, I have watched countless patients struggle with relationships that slowly poison their spirit. These relationships did not begin as obvious threats. They started with small, almost invisible requests that grew larger over time. By understanding these patterns, you can protect the sacred territory of your inner self. Tonight, I will share with you 5 warning signs, 5 requests that signal danger in any relationship. When someone asks for these things, they are not asking for normal human connection. They are asking for parts of yourself that should never be given away. The mind contains many rooms. Some are filled with light, others with shadow. We all carry both, but certain people will try to occupy too many of your rooms. They will claim territory that belongs only to you. Your task is to recognize when this happens and protect your inner kingdom. This is not about avoiding all difficult relationships. Life involves struggle and compromise. But there is a clear line between healthy challenge and slow destruction. My goal is to help you see this line clearly so you can choose connections that lead toward wholeness rather than fragmentation. The first dangerous request comes from those who ask for your complete identity. These people cannot accept you as you are, with all your contradictions and complexities. Instead, they demand that you become a simplified version of yourself, one that fits neatly into their world. You will notice this happening when someone consistently criticizes aspects of your personality that harm no one. They may say, "Why must you always be so thoughtful?" Or "You read too much," or "Your interests are strange." These statements seem minor at first, but they are the beginning of a process meant to reshape you. I once worked with a patient named Margaret. She was naturally curious and loved astronomy. When she married, her husband found her interest impractical and a waste of time. At first, she defended her passion, but slowly she put away her telescope. She stopped buying books on the subject. Years later, when she came to my office, she could barely remember the names of constellations that once brought her such joy. This is how it happens, not all at once, but gradually. The unique aspects of your personality are questioned, then challenged, then suppressed. Eventually, you become a shadow of yourself, living according to someone else's blueprint for your life. The danger here lies in what I call conformity to the collective. When we surrender our unique traits to please others, we betray our individual path. Each person has a specific psychological journey. When you abandon this journey to become what someone else demands, you create inner conflict that may express itself through anxiety, depression, or physical symptoms. Those who ask for your identity often disguise their requests as concern. "I only want what's best for you," they say. But watch their actions. Do they celebrate your successes? when those successes don't involve them? Do they support pursuits they personally find uninteresting? If not, they are not concerned with your growth, but with your compliance. You can recognize this warning sign by paying attention to how you feel after interactions. Do you feel smaller? Do you feel hesitant to share certain thoughts or interests? Do you find yourself editing your speech or behavior to avoid criticism? These are signs that someone is asking for your identity. The appropriate response is not necessary to end the relationship immediately. Sometimes people make these requests unconsciously and can learn to stop. The first step is to name what is happening. I notice you often criticize my interest in astronomy. This is important to me, and I need you to respect that even if you don't share my enthusiasm. If the person truly cares for you, they will reflect on their behavior. If they continue to demand your identity, you must decide whether the relationship justifies such a significant sacrifice. In most cases, it does not. Your uniqueness is not a flaw to be corrected. It is the essential material from which you build a meaningful life. Guard it carefully. The second warning sign involves people who ask for constant emotional labor without reciprocation. These relationships become noticeably unbalanced over time, with you providing endless support while receiving very little in return. These people arrive in your life carrying what seems like reasonable needs. They are going through difficult times. They need someone to listen, to understand, to help carry their burdens. This is normal human connection. But then the pattern never changes. Every conversation centers on their problems. Every interaction requires you to fill their emotional emptiness. I call these individuals psychological inflations. They expand by absorbing energy from others. You will recognize them by how you feel in their presence and afterwards, tired, drained, as if something vital has been extracted from you. Consider my patient Thomas. He had a friend of 15 years who called him regularly with crises. These calls often lasted hours, with his friend describing problems in exhaustive detail. Thomas would offer support, advice, and encouragement. But when Thomas faced difficulties himself and reached out, his friend would listen briefly before steering the conversation back to his own concern. After these exchanges, Thomas noticed he felt not just tired, but emotionally depleted. His sleep suffered. His creativity diminished. He found himself avoiding other social connections because he had no energy left for them. His friend had become what folklore might call a vampire, though not of blood, but of psychological energy. This pattern becomes particularly dangerous because it often involves genuine care. You truly want to help this person. You value the relationship. You remember times when things felt more balanced. This emotional attachment makes it difficult to identify the harmful pattern and even harder to address it. What makes this different from normal supporting a friend through difficult times? The key lies in reciprocity and change. In healthy relationships, both people take turns needing extra support. Both demonstrate concern for the other's well-being. Most importantly, the person receiving support uses that support to actually improve their situation. Those who ask for endless emotional labor often use your support not to solve problems, but to maintain them. They become comfortable in their suffering because it guarantees your attention. They develop what I term a negative complex around their difficulties, finding unconscious reward in remaining stuck. You can identify this warning sign by asking yourself simple questions. When was the last time this person showed genuine interest in my life? Do our conversations ever end with me feeling energized rather than depleted? Has their situation improved at all, despite years of my support? If the answers concern you, the solution begins with boundaries. You must limit the emotional resources you provide. This doesn't mean abandoning someone in need, but rather creating structure around your support. I can talk for 30 minutes today is a reasonable boundary. I care about you, but I need our conversations to include my experiences too, is another. Some people will respect these boundaries once made aware of them. Others will resist, sometimes fiercely. They may accuse you of not caring, of abandoning them, of being selfish. These reactions tell you something important about the relationship. Those who value you as a whole person will adapt. Those who value only what you can give them will object to any limitation. Remember that your emotional resources are finite and precious. You cannot pour endlessly from an empty cup. Protecting your psychological energy is not selfishness, but necessary self-preservation. The third dangerous request comes from those who demand blind loyalty above personal truth. These individuals or groups require absolute agreement, treating any independent thought as betrayal. This pattern appears in political movements, religious organizations, families, and even close friendships. It begins with reasonable expectations of support, but it crosses into dangerous territory when loyalty is demanded, even in situations where your conscience objects. I have observed in my clinical work that this demand creates what I call a split consciousness. The person develops two separate selves, one public self that demonstrates the required loyalty and one private self that harbors growing doubt. This split creates tremendous psychological tension that eventually requires resolution. Consider the case of William, who belonged to a close-knit business partnership. When one partner began engaging in questionable financial practices, the group closed ranks. We must present a united front, they insisted. William knew the actions were wrong, but feared losing his community and livelihood if he spoke up. For months, he maintained outward loyalty while his inner conflict grew. Eventually, this manifested as severe anxiety attacks that brought him to my office. The demand for blind loyalty is particularly dangerous because it directly opposes what I consider the central task of human life, individuation. This is the process of developing a complete, honest relationship with yourself, including both your noble and shadow aspects. Blind loyalty requires you to ignore parts of your experience, creating a false self that becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. You will recognize this warning sign when disagreement is treated as disloyalty. Watch for phrases like, if you're not with us completely, you're against us, or after all we've done for you, this is how you repay us. These statements reveal that the relationship values conformity over truth. This pattern becomes especially harmful in groups. Humans naturally seek belonging, and the threat of exclusion activates primitive fears. Groups that demand blind loyalty exploit this vulnerability, creating powerful emotional pressure to conform. This is what I have called participation mystique, where individual consciousness becomes absorbed by group identity. The appropriate response to this warning sign requires courage. You must maintain what I call your psychological sovereignty while navigating social bonds. This begins with internal clarity. Ask yourself, what do I truly think about this situation? What does my conscience tell me? Honor these answers. even if only in your private thoughts at first. Then, test the relationship by expressing minor disagreements. The response will tell you much about whether blind loyalty is required. In healthy relationships, disagreement leads to discussion. In controlling relationships, disagreement leads to punishment, exclusion, or emotional manipulation. Some will tell you that loyalty means standing by others, no matter what. This misunderstands true loyalty, which should be to the highest potential of the relationship, not to its lowest behaviors. Real loyalty sometimes requires honest opposition when someone's actions betray their better nature. Remember that those who demand you abandon your truth for their comfort do not seek relationship, so genuine connection can grow from such soil. The fourth warning sign involves people who repeatedly ask for your honest thoughts and feelings, only to reject, dismiss, or punish you when you provide them. This creates a particularly confusing dynamic that can make you doubt your own perceptions. These relationships often begin with what seems like a healthy interest in open communication. You can tell me anything, they assure you. I want to know what you really think. These invitations seem genuine, and initially, you may share minor concerns or differences without negative consequences. But when you express thoughts or feelings that contradict their self-image or desires, their reaction reveals the true nature of the request. They become defensive, angry, or withdraw emotionally. They may accuse you of being too sensitive, too negative, or misunderstanding them. The message becomes clear. They wanted a specific kind of truth, one that confirms what they already believe. I worked with a married couple where this pattern had created years of frustration. The husband regularly asked his wife for honest feedback about various situations, but when she shared her true perspective, he would launch into lengthy explanations of why she was wrong. Eventually, she stopped offering genuine responses, instead saying what she knew he wanted to hear. By the time they reached my office, authentic communication had become impossible. This pattern creates what I call a double bind situation. You are asked to do something, share your truth, but then punished for doing exactly what was requested. Over time, this creates serious psychological confusion. You begin to distrust your own perceptions and feelings. You question whether your experiences are valid. This is a form of what modern psychologists term gaslighting, though I would call it reality distortion. The danger here lies in how this affects your relationship with yourself. When your truth is consistently rejected, you begin to reject it too. You lose touch with your authentic responses to situations. Your internal compass becomes calibrated to external expectations rather than genuine feelings. This disconnection from self lies at the root of many psychological difficulties. You can identify this warning sign by paying attention to patterns rather than individual incidents. Everyone occasionally responds poorly to feedback, but if someone repeatedly asks for your honesty and then consistently reacts with rejection, you are facing this warning sign. The appropriate response begins with recognizing the pattern, then directly address it. I've noticed that when I share my honest thoughts as you ask, the conversation often becomes difficult. I'm left feeling that my perspective isn't actually welcome. A person capable of genuine relationship will consider this observation, even if it takes time. Someone invested in controlling the narrative will deny the pattern despite clear evidence. If the pattern continues, you must protect your sense of reality. This might mean limiting what you share with this person. It might mean seeking external validation from more trustworthy sources. In severe cases, it might mean reducing or ending contact. Remember that your perceptions and feelings are valuable data about your experience. They need not be perfect or complete to deserve basic respect. Those who consistently reject your truth are not seeking connection, but confirmation. They want not the relationship, but a mirror. The fifth and final warning sign involves those who claim to support your development but become uncomfortable or hostile when that development actually occurs. These people want you to grow, but only in ways they can predict and control. This pattern appears in many relationships, sometimes with subtle contradictions that are difficult to identify. Parents may encourage education, but become threatened when new knowledge leads their child to different values. Your partners may support career advancement, but grow resentful when success changes the relationship dynamic. Friends may cheer your initial steps toward healing, but distance themselves when your new health requires changing how you interact. I call this the development paradox. Those caught in it consciously want your improvement, but unconsciously require your familiarity. They have built their relationship with you around certain fixed expectations. Your genuine transformation threatens those expectations, creating anxiety they may not even recognize in themselves. Consider my patient, Elizabeth. She had struggled with low self-confidence for years, often deferring to others' opinions and rarely expressing her needs. When she began therapy, her husband initially supported her efforts. He said he wanted her to become more confident and assertive, but when she actually began stating preferences that differed from his and setting boundaries around her time, he complained that she had become selfish and not the woman he married. What had happened? Her husband sincerely thought he wanted her growth, but he had unconsciously benefited from her previous pattern of accommodation. Her transformation threatened the comfortable dynamic he had come to expect. His support extended only to improvements that didn't inconvenience him. This warning sign is particularly difficult to detect because it often emerges only after you've made significant progress in your development. The initial encouragement seems genuine. Only when your growth begins to affect the relationship does the resistance appear. You can identify this pattern by noticing how people respond to actual changes in your behavior, not just your stated intentions to change. Many will support your goals in theory, but react negatively to their practice. I'm glad you're setting boundaries quickly becomes, why are you always unavailable lately? When those boundaries affect them, the appropriate response depends on whether the person can recognize and work through their contradictory feelings. Sometimes bringing awareness to the pattern is enough. I notice you encourage me to be more assertive, but seem frustrated when I assert myself with you. Can we talk about that? Some relationships can evolve to accommodate your transformation. Others cannot. This is painful but important to recognize. Not everyone who was appropriate for one phase of your life remains suitable as you develop. Some connections naturally complete their purpose and must be released with gratitude for what they provided. This ties directly to what I consider the purpose of human life: individuation, the process of becoming more fully yourself. This journey necessarily changes your relationship to others. Those who truly care for you will find ways to relate to your emerging self, even when it challenges them. Those who only cared for who you were must either adapt or fall away. Remember that your growth is not a betrayal of others, but fidelity to yourself. You do not owe anyone psychological stagnation. The discomfort others feel as you transform is their challenge to address, not yours to prevent through self-limitation. Now you know the 5 requests that signal danger, demands for your identity, for endless emotional labor, for blind loyalty, for truth that will be rejected, and for growth without real change. Each represents a different way relationships can undermine your psychological integrity. Understanding these patterns gives you power, not power over others, but power within yourself to make conscious choices about your connections. This awareness frees you from unconscious participation in harmful relationships. The goal is not perfect relationships. Such things do not exist among imperfect humans. The goal is conscious relationships, where patterns are recognized and addressed honestly. Sometimes this leads to healing and deeper connection. Sometimes it leads to necessary endings and new beginnings. Trust what you have learned here today. Trust also what you have always known in your quieter moments. The inner voice that whispers warnings when something feels wrong in a relationship is worth heeding. It speaks with the wisdom of your whole self, including paths your conscious mind might prefer to ignore. The path toward wholeness requires both connection and separation, both love and boundaries. Walking this path takes courage, but consider the alternative, a life shaped by others' demands rather than your own authentic nature. No relationship is worth that price. Choose carefully who you allow into the sacred space of your life. Your future self is shaped by these choices more than by almost anything else you do. Make these choices consciously, with clear eyes and a determined heart. The reward will be relationships that enhance rather than diminish the person you are becoming. Trust yourself. Protect your spirit. And remember that true connection never requires the sacrifice of your essential nature. With this wisdom, you can build a life filled with relationships that bring not depletion, but genuine joy.